But every time I would go really whole food, plant-based, my symptoms would just go out of control. And the brain fog was, I didn't even realize how bad the brain fog was until years and years later when it started to lift.
Welcome to the show, Neah. Thanks for joining me today.
Thank you. I'm excited to chat with you today.
All right. So, tell us about your health journey that led to you eating the carnivore way.
Yeah, it's kind of a long story, and I've talked about it in depth on my channel, but basically it started around my teenage years when I realized I was having some major issues with digestion. I was having a lot of pain, bloating, and honestly about every time I would eat, something bad would happen. I would either be stuck in the bathroom for hours trying to eliminate something, and essentially all this was happening while I was in school, and I was very embarrassed about it, and so I really didn't want anyone to know, and so I didn't tell anybody about what was happening. And that affected me through about age 15 or so is when I first remember it starting, and it seemed to me to come out of nowhere, and I didn't know really at the time what was going on. I just knew that every time I ate something, there was a reaction happening, and it was, all happening in my digestion. And so I kind of just put it in the back of my mind, like maybe this is just normal. Maybe everybody deals with this from time to time. Maybe this is just something that no one talks about really. And then as I moved on and kind of became more interested in health and nutrition, I started to put the pieces together and realize that maybe my diet was affecting my condition. Maybe it was what I was consuming, the types of foods or the amount of foods, or there was something to do with my diet that was causing this. So maybe if I could figure out how to eat better, or what the healthiest diet would be for me, then I could resolve some of these symptoms. And so that's really kind of when my whole journey began of studying nutrition and doing experiments on myself as far as different elimination diets, different protocols. I tried all kinds of crazy stuff that, maybe not a lot of people have heard of. And again, this isn't a very exciting topic to discuss with family or friends or anyone. And so part of the reason why I'm sharing a lot of this is to potentially help those who are suffering in silence and feel like they can't share these things. And so at the time I was reading some books, and someone actually had borrowed me a book that was the blood type diet. And according to that book, it told me that I should be vegetarian. And I'd heard other people, I had a couple friends who were vegetarian / kind of vegan at the time. And so I kind of got sucked into that plant-based world a little bit, thinking, okay, clearly that's the healthiest. I just need more whole grains, legumes, fruits and vegetables, and I should cut out the meat essentially. And so that's what I started out trying. And I would kind of go on and off of this because it made my symptoms worse almost immediately. I would try to cook things the right way. So I got into sprouting for a while and soaking all my legumes and rice and all that kind of stuff. But every time I would go really whole food, plant-based, my symptoms would just go out of control. And the brain fog was, I didn't even realize how bad the brain fog was until years and years later when it started to lift. And so that was something that just really affected my mood, really affected my motivation for improving my health. A lot of times I would go through these cycles where I would give up and then kind of just go back to more of a processed food diet, because ironically, those foods that I realized later, they were low in fiber and, low in a lot of the indigestible things that are in the whole foods. Those didn't affect me as much, at least not at the moment. And so I started to develop this really unhealthy relationship with food. This was probably so early to mid 20s when I was really trying to do the plant-based thing, trying to make it work for me, but I was just getting worse. And then I would start to restrict food and then binge, because I was like, every time I eat, I get sick. I don't want to eat in social situations because I don't know if I'm going to get sick, what's going to happen to me. And the pain would be so bad and it would last for so long that I couldn't just kind of like make a 5-minute trip to the bathroom out of it. It would be this, like I'd have to leave and go home and kind of hide out for a while. And so it just starts to affect all areas of your life. Going to work, I never wanted to eat before work because I didn't want to have an episode. And I worked in the restaurant industry as a bartender and waited tables also for years. And so it's a job where you don't really have like set breaks and you can't just kind of take 15 minutes here or there, to take care of anything like that. And so I would essentially stop eating for days at a time. And then I developed this really unhealthy habit of restriction and then binging on things that were not very healthy a lot of the times because I'd get so hungry and those foods were safer. So eventually I kind of came to the conclusion that whether this plant-based thing is technically the healthiest diet or not, it's clearly not helping me. And so I need to make a change. And that's when I kind of went to the internet again and started learning about more of an ancestral approach to diet. And I found the paleo diet. And so that was when I kind of made an overnight switch and cut out all grains was the main change that I made there. I still kept in like sweet potatoes and potatoes, some starches, but I cut out all the grains and legumes and added in more meat and more healthy fats, right? Like the olive oils and the coconut oils and all the things like that. I was still kind of afraid of animal fats at that point. So I kind of noticed at that point a marked improvement in a lot of the major symptoms that I was suffering from: digestion, brain fog, fatigue, mood, all those kinds of things. And so I thought, okay, at least this is progress. At least I'm on the right track. But I sort of plateaued maybe about a month or two in. I didn't continue to notice any new improvements. And so that's when I kind of got obsessed and I was reading everything I could get my hands on, reading in forums, searching all dark corners of the internet. And I noticed how people were losing a lot of weight on keto. And that was sort of the buzz around that. But I thought, okay, keto is just basically what I'm doing, but removing all of the extra starches and just going down to the low carb vegetables. And so I thought I can do that. So that was the next change I made. And again, there was this symptom improvement, but it didn't continue past a certain point. So I was slowly getting better, but I thought I'm still having these episodes a few times a week. There's still days where I'm like, I just can't think. I can't, feel like I want to get out. I feel like I don't want to get out of bed type of a feeling. And so for a while, that's kind of what I thought was the extent of the options as far as eating plans could be. And I did start learning around that time about FODMAPs and the low FODMAP diet. And that's when I started to get frustrated because I was realizing that all of these low FODMAP vegetables were the only vegetables that I had left on my ketogenic diet. All the cruciferous vegetables, the broccoli, the cauliflower, the kale, the greens, onions here and there, and garlic. These were all these kind of high-level gut irritants in the FODMAP category. And so I thought, well, if I start to cut those out, I'm hopefully will make an improvement. So essentially I got down to meat, olive oil, olives, cucumbers, bell peppers, and I was eating like a giant organic spring mix salad every day. So I was eating like 2 huge salads a day with meat and some olive oil, basically. And at that point, I was feeling pretty good, but I would still always get bloated after I ate. I would still have all these digestive symptoms. And if you want, we can talk about some of the other crazy cleanses and things that I've been doing along the way too, if you want. But so I was still doing all of those things. And I realized, hey, I'm still dependent on these enemas and home enemas. And I was still trying to take probiotics and all these extra things to counter the effects that I was still getting from this very limited diet as it felt at the time. And then one day I remember just going in the fridge. I was like running late to work. And I think I just grabbed some chicken or like a piece of steak that was left over and ate it in the car on the way to work. And I didn't really think about it at the time, but it was like the next day when I realized, hey, like nothing happened when all I ate was that meat. And that's something I rarely did. I always had a big leafy green salad, right? Because that's good for you. And so it was a couple days after that, I remember standing in the kitchen and I was making something and I said out loud to myself, maybe meat's the only thing I can eat. Maybe that's literally all I can tolerate. And then I went back to the internet and realized, okay, Michaela Peterson did this diet and it put her insane arthritis and autoimmune stuff into remission. And Sean Baker came up on YouTube, and I think this was 2018, my first round of carnivore. And I found the blog Zero Carb Zen, and it was a story of this woman who had gone on a very similar journey as I had, trying all these different weird mono diets, and had found her relief in a zero carb carnivore diet. And so I thought, like, this is the thing that people are doing, and it's called the carnivore diet. And so that was the day I completely switched. I was like, okay, I'm not eating any more plants at all. I'm going to go full in on this. There were a couple of caveats, which we can talk about too. I still drank coffee the entire time, but it was always black coffee. And I was drinking alcohol at the time. I had been drinking alcohol for a long time, kind of part of the culture in the restaurant business. And there were some other reasons why I relied on that pretty heavily for, emotional reasons and things like that. And so I couldn't quite let go of that, but I was drinking like zero carb drinks and stuff like that. And so 11 months, I believe, 11 and a half months, just shy of a year was how long I had my first round of carnivore with those things. And I'd say within 6 weeks to 3 months, all my digestive symptoms had healed. Like, I had no more gas, no more pain, no more bloating. My digestion normalized. I had normal bowel movements, less frequent, but they were complete and they weren't painful and they didn't have any weird stuff coming out with them. Like, I was like, this is what normal must feel like. And my mood started to improve. And like, I can't even, how I mentioned, like, you don't even realize sometimes how bad you feel until you get a glimpse of what feeling good is like and feeling healthy is like, and living for a few weeks without the chronic brain fog. And you see like, oh, my brain can actually function at a higher level. And it was a high, and I think we call it zero carb zen or something to that effect. And that's real. And so I was definitely hooked, but like I said, I kind of had these hangups with the alcohol. And so that changed when I got pregnant and I had to give up the alcohol. But I felt really sick the first couple of trimesters. I had meat aversion. I had kind of aversion to everything. Everything just smelled and looked disgusting. And then because I had kind of had to give up that last habit that I had that I would use for comfort and emotional comfort, I let these foods start to creep back in. And then, so after I gave birth and breastfed my daughter for 2 years, I just slowly kind of let these foods become part of my existence again to replace old habits. And so now my round 2 of carnivore, as I call it, is coming back again from kind of that ground zero place of getting rid of the addictions to the foods. And I quit drinking all alcohol again when I started my carnivore journey almost 3 months ago. I think Thursday is a couple days from now is my 90-day mark. And so this time I'm doing zero carb, no alcohol. I'm still having coffee, but I'm just now getting to the point where I'm really starting to feel amazing again. And so I'm hoping my crazy, weird, long story can inspire someone or help someone who's suffered through similar things. Cause it's really like a nightmare, to go through. So.
Yeah, I do hope that people watch this, Neah, because you're describing a lot of things I even see with family members, and you probably experienced this where you can see people suffering, but sometimes the solution is not one that you can offer to them in any way, shape, or form. So you kind of like have to go, well, I hope one day that they actually like see someone, or they're looking for something, and something like this comes along, and it'll be not from me, it'll be from someone else, because I don't know what it is about family members. It's like if some piece of advice comes from a family member, it's often discounted as being, a load of baloney. But if it's coming from someone else as a complete stranger, well, that's a different story.
Yeah, it can oftentimes feel that way. And I know that's been the case for me sometimes when someone close to me is like, hey, you should quit doing this, or, you should look at this. And I'm always like, no, you don't know what you're talking about. And then some stranger says, hey, you should think about this. And I think it's the greatest idea. So yeah.
Yeah. I just want to touch on the alcohol a little bit because it's not something I often talk about. Not many other people talk about it. It's kind of, I don't know if it's a taboo thing, but I'd like to go there if you're willing. Because alcohol is one of the things that I've kept in, as well as coffee. It's not very often. It's like every couple of weekends. So I'm pretty happy to go. It's because my wife and I live separately, and then often when we are in the same place, we'll have a couple of drinks. That seems to be all right with me because I can go, then I can go another 2 weeks. It's not a problem. And sometimes we do have a few drinks as well. And I just know I don't, it's the brain fog, etc. So what's it been like for you, just like completely going cold turkey? Because I've got friends in hospitality, and I know exactly what you mean. Like it's a big part of the whole culture, having drinks after work, and that's all part of it. So what's that been like for you?
Well, I joke that I don't have any friends anymore, and I don't work in hospitality. I'm now a stay-at-home mom, and so that's really why it's easy, to be honest. I really think that's why I've been able to do it, is because I don't have the influence directly. I'm not in contact with that influence constantly, and so I'm actually really grateful that I'm in the situation that I'm in now, because it's made it a lot easier. But I think it's important to talk about the alcohol, because that was really the component that, although during that first round I got essentially 100% relief from all of my symptoms, that alcohol was always in the back of my mind as something that I knew was a problem. I knew it was probably, well, I know it's affecting my liver, and I had actually heard people talk about how when you're in ketosis and the way alcohol disrupts that whole process, because it's a poison and your body is trying to remove that first. So it actually can, even if you're drinking, like I was drinking vodka sodas with no juice, no, carbs, it's still, sugar is still an alcohol, or alcohol is still a sugar. And so it's treated as a poison by the body. And it's, all these processes are interfering with autophagy and fasting and these healing things that I was searching for my gut health and all this stuff. And so I knew it was something I needed to let go of. And this is kind of where I get goosebumps about when you embark on a journey like this and you try a diet like this. I think whatever you need to let go of is presented to you, whether it's a substance or a food addiction or any emotional component that you're struggling with, that you're using something else to self-medicate or to get through on a regular basis, that will be presented to you because all your cravings go away. I wasn't craving sugar anymore. I wasn't craving, the chips that I used to eat all the time when I would be sad or stressed. And alcohol was the only thing left. And so I knew that I had to get, it was blatant. It was obvious that this was the only thing left that was hindering me. But I couldn't let it go at that time. And so, the higher power, I think God, the universe works in mysterious ways. And I think that's one of the great blessings that having my baby girl gave me, was it forced me to deal with that. And now I'm in a place where I can let it go. And again, I'm kind of like you were. That's where I'd like to be in the future. I don't necessarily think that I need to abstain for the rest of my life, but I need to go, as long as I can without it, and see how good I can feel and how healthy I can become, and how clear I can become, and then decide if I want it back in my life, and if so, how often, and in what context, and all that kind of stuff. So it's really been a profound kind of inner journey for me to deal with the alcohol part. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, I dealt with this actually even before I switched to carnivore, because I was drinking every night. Like I was having a couple of glasses of wine every night after work, And it didn't matter whether there was someone here or not, kids, but it didn't matter. And I thought, okay, this has got to stop because it's been going on for long enough. I think I've probably been doing that for like 6 months or so after a sort of whatever stressor had been going on. That was my relief from work or whatever. And so I thought, okay, well, what can I do? So I thought, well, I'll just try some non-alcoholic options and see what they're like. And the weird thing is, it was like a sparkling rosé, right? Not a lot of people don't like, but I actually enjoy that kind of thing. And the non-alcoholic version was actually really good. Like I'd go through the entire bottle of it, but at least there was no alcohol in it. And so I'd kept on with that for a couple of weeks, didn't have any alcohol. And then I realized that I didn't really feel like it anymore. And I managed to sort of make this bridge from having alcohol to having something that was kind of like a similar thing, but without the alcohol. And then I was just able to give it up. I know that that's not possible for a lot of people, but that's kind of like how I went. And then I thought, okay, well, now I'll see what happens if I reintroduce this. There's a birthday party on this, so let's see what happens if I have a couple of drinks. And then, like the next day, I knew that what the consequences were as well, because I could just, the brain, there was a bit foggy in the head. I knew that those things, but I can recover from things, fortunately, quickly. But at the same time, I didn't feel like I had that afternoon, didn't have to go and have a couple of drinks after work. It's like you go through this process and then eliminate it and then wait till the craving goes and then let's see. In some ways, I feel like it's kind of cheating because I don't really feel like I address whatever the underlying reason was for me to do that. But at the same time, I think maybe there isn't always an underlying thing. Maybe it's just a habit that you've acquired and it does allow you to cope with whatever else is going on. And you just kind of subconsciously find another way to cope. But did you sort of have to go through this hanging on by the fingernails kind of period when you first gave that up, or did it just happen organically?
Well, when I found out I was pregnant, that's kind of, obviously that was the cold turkey moment. And
Yeah.
so I can't really tell if I'm sure there was a withdrawal and an effect that happened, but it was also, the hormones, and I gave up coffee immediately as well because I became completely intolerant to caffeine. I couldn't even smell coffee, like literally almost everything smelled disgusting to me. And so I just pretty much felt terrible anyway for 3-4 months or so. So I can't really tell you exactly what part of that was giving up the alcohol, but this time, so since then, it's like I'm kind of like what you were describing. I'm just having like maybe a drink or two, but it was a nightly ritual for me. I'd put the baby down, or she's not a baby anymore, but she's 3. But put her to bed, and then that was my me time. I would just sit up and watch YouTube or paint my nails or do something and have a couple of drinks to relax before bed. And when I realized that that was still something that was causing me to wake up with less energy, with a headache, not feeling my best, and here I'm trying to be somebody that's healing again and getting rid of these sugar addictions, I can't have this in my life. So there was sort of a moment where I was like, okay, I have to do this, and I know I have to do this. And so I just kind of made the decision, like, whenever the last of it's gone in my house, and I'm not going to purchase anymore. And that's basically what I did. And it really was easier than I thought it was going to be, but it was because I was really firm in the decision. And I think that's something that we can struggle with, really, with setting any type of goal. It's like superficially, you want to do something or you want to make a change, but if you're not truly ready and you're not making like, I don't know who gives this example. It's like the burn the boats example where, you're getting onto this island and you have to win this war because we burned the boats. We can't go back. Like, if you're not ready to make that firm of a decision that this is what I'm going to do, then I think it's really easy to fall off the wagon right away and kind of go right back. And so for me, it was like, I'm going to do this. And I had to frame it for myself, kind of like how I was describing, like, this isn't going to be the rest of my life. Like, I can't think about it in terms of I'm never going to drink again, or, I'm never going to have a drink again. It's like, hey, I'm going to go 100 days with no alcohol and carnivore and see how I feel. And after 100 days, I'll decide then, what I want to do. So I broke it up into a smaller, more manageable piece that my mind could accept and handle, and then made the decision that I'm doing this for myself because I love myself and I want to see how good I can feel.
Yeah, it does allow some contrast there, because if you've like drinking or whatever it is that you've got something that it's kind of a need, you never get to experience what the contrast is without that in terms of your brain and your general health, unless you do have a reasonable sized gap. And that's what I've found that too. Now I'm very, very conscious of, okay, well, if I'm going to have a couple of drinks at this party or whatever, then I know exactly what's going to happen. Like, I know that there is going to be a consequence for that, and I'm prepared for that up to a certain point. But I wasn't really sort of aware, or that wasn't something that I was sort of conscious of prior to then. You kind of you can just get used to like not being 100%, like being okay with being 75%. And then at some point, I guess we decided, well, 75% just isn't good enough anymore. But you've got to have that gap to be able to experience what it is like to be like 95 or 100%.
Right. I totally agree.
Yeah. So I'll switch gears a little bit. For anyone who's thinking about starting the carnivore diet or has just started, have you got any advice for people starting out to help them get started on the right foot?
Yeah, I think it's almost along the same lines of what we just discussed, where there's a decision and there's a why factor that I think is really important. Why are you interested in the carnivore diet? Why are you, what are your goals as far as what you're trying to heal from, or maybe you're trying to lose weight. There's all different kinds of things that people find relief from eating this way. And I would just be very honest with myself about what that entails. So for instance, if you're working in an environment where everybody goes out to lunch constantly and you're feeling anxiety about, okay, well, what am I going to do, when I'm kind of left out of those situations? Or in my case, it would have been the after work drinks, or maybe it's happy hour and that's what all your social group is doing, or your significant other likes to watch the football game and drink some beers, and that's your bonding time in your relationship. And so there's all these layers to embarking on a new way of eating, giving up anything that you want to try giving up. And so I would just really sit back and look at, so sorry, can you hear her?
That's so cute.
We gotta be a little quieter, sweetheart. I love you. And so I would just really sit down before you hit your day one and, you dump out everything in your fridge and go to Costco and buy a bunch of meat. I would really sit down and look at your life and your schedule and your lifestyle and see, okay, how is this going to affect all these different areas, and kind of set yourself up a plan to prepare ahead of time, or, maybe there's something that you can do to help you succeed in those areas that you think you might have a struggle in. And so I would say that for sure. And then really hone in on your why. And I think a lot of people that get to a place where they want to try a very low carb or a carnivore diet have tried everything else, or have tried almost everything else, and it hasn't worked, or they're kind of feeling like they're at their wit's end. And so I think people typically have a pretty strong why. It's like, hey, I have nothing to lose, and everything to gain situation. So if you're in that place, I think you're in probably for some success in sticking with this. Yeah, try to prepare yourself, try to eliminate as many triggering things as you can from your home. That's something I've done food wise, and then also environment wise. Like, I'm trying to really consciously create like a peaceful temperature in my home at all times. And so it keeps the stress level down and it keeps the positivity up. And I think just having a general atmosphere of tranquility and peace during a time when you're trying to make a big change that's really helped me personally too. So.
Speaking of being prepared, I've noticed you do a lot of preparation with some of the videos on your channel. So what's something that you've always got in your fridge or your cupboard ready to go no matter what?
Ground beef and butter, always. I have 2 drawers. One is for defrosting and one is for defrosted and ready to, or if it's not been previously frozen, ready to pull out, and always got butter. Those are the staples. And I'd say club soda is another staple that I love. I like that little bubbly flavor in water. That's a good thing to do too if you're having a craving. I usually find like just hydrating helps in general, but having something fizzy and just got that little bit of pep to it will kind of kick like a stupid sugar craving type of thing when I know I'm not hungry.
I like the bubbly water too, but I'll binge on it. Well, I don't know if you can binge on bubbly water, but I'll buy 2 bottles of it and it'll be gone, very,
Okay,
very quickly.
maybe I do too then.
And then butter as well. Yeah, that's definitely, especially at night time for some reason, if I'm feeling like I just want to snack on something, then butter fixes that. It's really good for that. Gosh, she's so cute. How old did you say your daughter is?
She's 3.5.
3.5. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
My son's like almost 4. So my daughter's 5.
Oh,
So
yeah, it's a fun age. She's learning so fast.
Yeah. What else have I got? Oh, so do you have a favorite kitchen appliance?
Ooh, right now it's my dehydrator. I had this one years ago and I just replaced it now. And I'm really into like making jerky. I need to get a vacuum sealer so I can kind of put more of it into like long-term food storage, but I love dehydrating. And so that's probably the most fun one that I'm using right now, but I'm definitely like a crock pot girl at heart. I love just throwing stuff in the crock pot. I'm so excited to do more stews and bone broths and stuff this fall. It's still pretty hot where I am, so it doesn't feel like fall yet, but it's almost November, so
You actually inspired me to get my crock pot out again, but I have a question for you about it because I've tried a few different things in it. Brisket seems to work really well, but I've left it on overnight. Like I did like a really cheap cut of steak. I think it was a chuck steak, and I put that in and left it on the low setting overnight, and it was tender, but it was kind of dry. Like, is there? What's your advice there? Is it because I'm cooking it for too long, even though I've got it on low, or because it was covered, like it was covered in liquid, but it was still kind of dryish, the texture of it.
what do you know about what weight it was? Was it
But
a
probably
couple pounds?
about 2 pounds, yeah, like a kilogram.
Okay. Yeah, I would say I do this with pork roasts every once in a while that seem like, oh, they're fatty enough, but I do think it's probably just from cooking too long. But if you had broth or liquid in there, but overnight, 10 hours or 12 hours?
Yeah, probably it was about 12 hours, I'd say, at least
Okay.
before I
It's
then put
probably
it to
too
the
long.
like warm setting. Yeah, okay. So I'll try it for less.
Maybe
Like,
maybe 6 to 8, and I do a fork test at like 8 hours and see how it tastes to you at that point.
all right, yeah, it's good. I'll try. I'll put it on in the morning instead of putting it on at night. So, what do you find is the easiest thing about eating the carnivore way, and the hardest thing about eating the carnivore way?
The easiest thing and the thing I like the most is the simplicity of like the planning and prep. I find, and the longer you do it, the more you figure out what you like and what works for you and your family. It's so easy to just like reorder or go buy the same stuff and prep it the same way. It becomes almost, mindless in that way. And so I'd say that's definitely the thing I like. That's the easiest. The most difficult, I would say, is eating out at restaurants. And it kind of seems simple on the surface, but I'm pretty sensitive, I think, still to seasonings. At least I try to really not do any seasonings. And I know that I'm very sensitive to the seed oils. And so that's something that's really hard to avoid. Even just getting a burger, you don't know if it's been cooked on a flat top that has seed oils or anything. I guess I'm not really ordering anything fried, but having worked in restaurants for so long, you know what that it's like to have that customer who is overly particular about what they're ordering and wants the chef to come out and verify that this isn't in their food and stuff. And so I remember thinking like, well, why are you even eating out then if you're going to be this way? So I never want to be that person. but obviously I'm trying to be as clean as possible. And so that's the most difficult, is choosing a place where everybody else can kind of get what they want and I can get something that's as clean as I possibly can.
Yeah, I had this interesting experience. I went out for dinner for the first time in ages a few weeks ago. I got invited with a whole bunch of other people who are carnivores. We went to a restaurant and it was a steak restaurant, and it was funny to see the waitress's face because everyone just went steak. Like they just ordered steak all the way around the table.
She's
And they
like,
actually
let
had
me
to like,
guess.
yeah, they had to get someone to come and said, no, don't worry about the sides, don't worry about the salad. We just want the steak like salted and just cook it in butter, and that's all good. And just their face was priceless, but it was so good as well. Not to have to deal with anybody like giving you funny looks because you're just ordering the steak only. So what's the biggest challenge that you are facing with your health right now?
Psoriasis. And that's something I didn't mention in kind of my long-winded journey story, because there's been all these little weird things that have sort of added up over time. But I had this huge flare-up of, I think it's pronounced guttate psoriasis. So I don't get like the typical kind of scaly elbow patches that you think of, or, you know, where it's like one large thing, but it's like these little tiny leopard spots that just kind of appear randomly. And so in my mid-20s, I had one where I had never had it before, and then all of a sudden I was covered in spots, and that's a whole story in itself. But I went and got steroid cream and went in the sun a lot, and it went away, and I didn't have any for a long time after that. So I'd say like late 20s, I'd have a little bit, like one or two spots pop up during the winter months. And so I always thought, okay, I'm just probably low in vitamin D. I'd use tanning beds sometimes, or, you know, be out in the sun as soon as it was warm enough, and they usually just go away. But over the last year or so, I've had really one persistent patch right on my knee that it comes and goes. It will almost completely heal, and then it will flare up again. And I thought, okay, as soon as I go carnivore, I'm cutting out the alcohol, I'm cutting out all the dairy, like I'm going super strict. It's just going to disappear. I live in a very warm climate. I have access to sun all the time. And so I was getting in the sun all the time, but it's still here. I had one on my face that was right here. That one's gone finally. I had one on my other leg. That one's disappeared. But this one patch on my knee just is relentless. And psoriasis is so tricky because every combination of things I've done for more than 6 months at a time, when I've been super clean, sometimes I've had it and sometimes I haven't. And then when I've been eating really bad and drinking a lot of alcohol, sometimes I'd have no psoriasis, and then sometimes I would. And so there's never been really a clear, obvious indicator to me of what is causing it. And so I think in the last update video I made, I talked about how I've noticed that right around the time leading up to the first day of my cycle, I noticed a flare up the last 2 months. And so I thought, well, maybe this is more stress / hormone related than I have realized in the past. And that could explain why some of the dietary changes haven't completely gotten rid of this one spot. And it'll get pretty itchy and pretty irritated. And then, like right now it's almost gone. It's improved tremendously. But a few days ago, it was like really red and really itchy. And I'm like, I don't know what I did different. And so it's really puzzling. And I've had a lot of people comment on some of my videos, like it's a yeast issue, or it's just a sugar issue if you ate some sugar. And then other people will say, oh, mine healed when I cut out bacon, or mine healed when I did this light therapy. And so I feel like it's very individual. So I'm still trying to hack that. I don't know what's going to get rid of that yet.
Have you checked your air conditioner for mold?
No, but that thought has come across my mind. Somebody left a comment about mold too. And we moved into this apartment in April. And I had it before we moved. So, but that's something that's kind of been in the back of my mind. How exactly do I test for that? Can I buy something?
Well, I think if you just inspect just the filters themselves, And it just depend. I think it does depend a lot on like how humid the weather is generally. So the more humid, obviously, the more moisture, the more likely mold is to grow. But this is from Michaela Peterson. Like that was the reason why she was off the air for so long because, she thinks that because she grew up, there was black mold in her house, and then once she eliminated that, it took a long time to heal. But then that was like the environmental factor that was really compounding, wherever else she had going on. So you never know. Something to check out. I always say to people to check that just in case.
No, it's a good idea. I'll do that.
Yeah. Now you mentioned that you've had some pretty radical cleanses that you've done in the past. Can you tell us about one of those?
The most, I guess, the one that I did for the longest was I tried a lot of different supplements, very high grade probiotics. I saw a couple of kind of general practitioners over the years looking for answers, and I didn't really get anything out of that. I was in the emergency room once and in the parking lot of the emergency room another time, thinking I was dying because of the pain that I was having. Like I thought I had appendicitis or something like that. So I sometimes people would say, oh, well, you should take this supplement, you should try this. And so, or get probiotics and take more fiber was usually always what they would say. And so I tried a lot of that stuff, and probiotics don't work for me at all. Even if I microdose them, I get bloated right away, a lot of gas and pains. But I started getting these colonic treatments. So there's a technician who's trained to do this, and you go and you lay on this table and they put a tube up your bum and essentially pump water in, and multiple times in about a 45-minute to an hour session, and it flushes out everything that's in there. And so I'd be getting those once a week, probably about 6 months if I remember right. And then it started to get a little expensive, and I was trying to hide all this from the people in my life because I was very embarrassed about it. And so that factor was kind of what made me kind of dwindle down and stop doing it, because I kind of couldn't make excuses for this Wednesday at 9 o'clock. I'm always out doing something random, for an hour. But then eventually I told the people in my life that this is what I was going through, and I started doing home enemas because they're cheap and you can do them as many times as you want. And so I just bought like a basic enema kit. You hang it on your bathroom door, and it's the same process, but you heat your own water, and you want to use like obviously very sterile water. I did coffee enemas, saltwater enemas, and then just plain water enemas. And then I got to the point where I was doing those once a day to every other day, because I couldn't get a full elimination any other way. Even when I was down to like those big salads with meat, I couldn't. I would go, but then I'd feel like there's always something in there still. And so I kind of got addicted to those because that was the only, but then I'd be flushing out all my electrolytes. I'd be so incredibly tired after doing these. I'm going to have to lay down and rest for like 4 to 5, 6 hours sometimes before I could even function and do anything. So it was just, and that's kind of part of the reason why I would continue drinking too, is just because, you just get depressed after a while and you think, okay, like this is the rest of my life. Like I'm just a sick person. I can't function. I can't pursue the things that I'm dreaming about doing. Screw it. I'll just have a drink. And so all these things played into each other. And so anyway, that went on for that was until I got to carnivore, and then I stopped doing them essentially because I didn't need to anymore. So that was probably the most radical thing that I was doing.
Yeah, I don't miss bowel issues. I just thought they were just like, okay, this is just life. You deal with the diarrhea, you deal with constipation, you deal with gas, you deal with bloatedness. You just have to deal with all that stuff. But actually, it is not true, and you can have it, and you don't have to have any of those things. And I'm so glad that, if I'm grateful for one thing about finding the carnivore way of eating, it's that, because I really like being able to go to bed without feeling like you've got a balloon stuck in your bowels, like so good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, life-changing, literally.
Yeah, and your daughter agrees too. So what advice would you have for 25-year-old Neah?
Oh, wow. Don't give up on yourself. Don't let the tunnel get too dark. There's always a light and keep focusing on the light. If you don't give up on yourself and you keep searching, you'll always find a solution.
That's good.
For sure.
And if people are going to want to get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
My YouTube channel there, and I have my email address is neahsway@gmail.com. And that's on the channel too as well, if anybody wants to email me. And YouTube's the only social media platform that I use currently. I don't use Instagram or Twitter, or I guess it's X, and TikTok's the other one that all the kids are using these days. That I just YouTube's plenty for me, and so it's that, or my email. And I do have a website. I'm making some shirts, and I'm about to launch some little patches, like iron-on patches. I'm gonna do some cool grill cooking related little thingies that I'm gonna put on my website. So that's neahsway.co. If anyone wants to check that out.
All right, I'll put that in the description for you. Have you got any final thoughts or messages that you want to leave the viewers with before we wrap it up?
I think, a lot of the pushback that we get for eating this way, and a lot of the things that make it difficult, some of like we've got the holidays coming up, and that can be a really difficult time for people to make changes or to stay on the path that they're trying to stay on with their nutrition. I think, it's so important to put yourself first sometimes. And I know sometimes it's easy to feel like that's a selfish thing to do. I know that's something I've struggled with, where I will kind of give in to some social pressure because I don't want to offend anyone. I don't want, grandma to feel bad if I'm not eating her famous pie that she makes every year type of thing. And so that stuff can be really difficult. And so I would just encourage people, as these situations come up this time of year, to, it's okay to make compromises sometimes, but really stay true to what your goals are. Take some time in your day to journal or to meditate or to exercise. Exercise is something that I really lean on now as a comfort and as a way to release emotion and release stress. And so I don't do it just for the physical benefits, but I do it a lot for emotional and mental health benefits as well. And so if you can find a good habit to help get you through some of the more difficult times to getting healthy, I think that's definitely worth exploring. So that's what I would leave you with.
Awesome. Neah, thanks for that message, and thank you very much for being on my channel today.
Thanks for having me. It's been great.